You go live.
Okay, good morning. You can tell it's Saturday for a couple of reasons. First one is that I've got wet hair. Second one is that Mark's just wandered off because he's realised he hasn't got his phone. And since it's the phone that connects us to all the various different places that this is shared, as well as just Facebook, that's kind of necessary. So I don't know where he is, but hopefully he will return. He says he's on his way. So Saturday morning, for those of you that aren't aware, hopefully everybody does know, probably not the bank holiday you were originally planning, but hopefully everybody's doing something slightly different. I'm not planning to work every day. So that's different for me because that'll be the first long weekend, certainly since lockdown, that not planning to work all the way through it.
I've turned it public. There we go.
So was I just talking to myself before?
No, everybody can see it, but now they can share. It can now be shared. So you can hit share, please, and please do.
Oh, well, there are 25 people there, so that's lovely.
Yeah, that's already
Morning, Stu. Morning, Chris. Morning, Tony. Morning, Jay. Oh, good. So thank you for telling me you are there, and I'm not just talking to myself. And hi to everybody else as well. Morning, Mark. Hope you're all right. So, yes.
I made it back.
Well done.
I should also just say, if you saw me hobbling into the thing there, I've also dropped
a big metal thing on his foot this morning.
Metal thing on my foot this morning. So I'm wandering around like Jake the Peg.
Well, I would imagine that tales of what colour Mark's foot is going to be will probably be a theme over the next week as it goes from purple to blue to yellow to whatever it's going to do. But yes, it's probably going to be quite interesting. I'll try and keep it away from you.
Morning,
maybe I'll
Charlie
just relate.
and Lisa. Hello. How is everybody?
And Gary and Fran.
Yeah. Oh, good morning, Gary.
Loads of people. Yes. Lovely. Right. So
it's Saturday, so we like to do something a little bit different. I nearly dressed up for this, actually.
Well, you say a little bit different. It's been quite a diverse week.
Yeah, it's been
I mean, if you look at the last 7 days, we've gone from Rao Reynolds to Bethany Ferry to Lynx Africa.
Lynx show was
to
brilliant.
Gemma Bradley to the Bonnevilles to an award-winning beatboxer.
Yeah, you missed me learning beatboxing yesterday. That's well worth a watch. I thought I was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, we know. You kept saying that all through the day.
No, I kept saying...
Including in meetings.
I kept saying... all through the day.
Today's guest. We would like to welcome, for your pleasure this morning...
something really different from what we've been doing recently. So, drum roll, please. It's Mr. Alex Metcalfe. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning to you both. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Yes. So, as we may have already spotted, to eager fans, Alex has brought a piano with him. Yay. Did you carry that in before we got here? Or?
Yeah, got a bit of help from Dominic Cummings. He wanted to get out and about, so he cut down.
Very topical, Alex. Very nice. Actually, I've just finished reading Ben Folds' autobiography and about how he did rather madly decide that the way to tour was to load a baby grand on and off a lorry in the early stages of the career.
Sure. Well, there's a couple of pianists who've insisted on always using their own piano and shipping it all around the world with them, like Christian Zimmerman, Vladimir Horowitz. So it's.
But that's got hideous implications for tuning, hasn't it? Because every time you move it, it goes out of tune.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably doesn't do the instrument a lot of good either. But if you're that married to your instrument, I can see why people want to do it.
And is there a lot of difference? I mean, that's a genuine question. I don't know the piano well enough. I mean, I know we have like a weighted keyboard downstairs, and I muck about on it, as you've seen and taken the mickey out of. but like, is it like? This sounds like a stupid question. It is a stupid question, but is it like a guitar? Like,
it's got a lot more strings than a guitar.
But do you know what I mean? Like, people are very, very attached to a guitar because their fingers kind of wear into it, and is it the same with the piano?
Well, it's certainly true that even ones that are a lot of the parts are mass produced. Each instrument sounds completely different to the next one off the production line, and there's a lot of handmade parts in this, so it's even more unique. But yes, the tone and the touch and the feel just varies hugely from instrument to instrument. So no, I don't think people completely understand why either. Again, it's like guitars, there's some sort of magic things that just, I don't know.
Just goes from one to the other, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, does it wear in like a guitar wears in?
Yes, well, particularly some technical reasons. The felts are usually quite hard lacquered when you first get a piano, and they gradually soften. So pianos, they change from being very bright in their early years to mellowing, usually peaking when they're about the age of 40, like me, and then to something of a decline. But you can get them pretty much reconditioned back to as good as new.
Well, and I should say, you and I sort of, well, I knew of you because of your kind of, what can I say, mad Hammond organ keyboard, I mean, inspired stuff that you were doing, and then I kind of got to know you through the Bowie shows that we do down in Tunbridge Wells.
Yeah.
But you are actually, as will quickly become obvious, a classically trained pianist. Where did you study?
The Royal College of Music in London.
Right. And is that as posh as it sounds? I mean, no, I mean posh. I mean, I know what I meant.
I had a huge reputation. I was quite intimidated going there, and then turned up and found it was full of northern brass players just as much as kind of aristocratic composers and pianists. So yeah, it's not too posh.
But it's also, isn't it? Annie Lennox, I'm pretty sure, went to the Royal College of
Yeah,
Music
no, there are
to
plenty
play
of
the flute, and lots of musicians who've gone on to do other things actually did go to that college, didn't they?
Yeah, I think Annie Lennox might have been the other place, the Academy. But certainly Herbie Flowers, who was Bowie's bassist in the early years. Elton John went to the Academy. So there was Barry Manilow, of course. I believe there's a
Barry
Manilow.
Manilow.
Yeah.
Well,
There is there's a prize.
Is Barry Manilow a good pianist, Alex?
I mean, can you? Art is totally subjective, isn't it?
Oh,
there's your answer.
wow.
Honestly, I do think, and I like a lot of artists that play a lot of piano, but I don't know enough to know whether they're great pianists.
No.
But then I suppose that is subjective. So I do love Ben Folds' piano playing, but I also know he seriously damaged his hands by playing the piano in that way because he considers himself a punk pianist. So that's obviously very different than being a classical pianist.
I would say so. I mean, it's the ability to be able to move people by creating sound on your instrument. That's all that matters at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter whether some pianists can play enormous amounts of notes very impressively, but they do something that's completely hollow and meaningless, whereas some pianists can. I mean, Benjamin Britten was most known as a composer. He wasn't by any means a virtuoso pianist, but when he touched the piano, something magical happened because he had such amazing imagination in sound, and he was able to recreate that on the instrument. He couldn't play virtuosically fast, but some of his recordings are just my absolute favorites. So.
I think Alex, you already know, classical's not exactly my scene, but I'm always fascinated when I see somebody do it. And I like to think that if somebody shows me something and it's done really, really well, that I'm able to recognize that. I hope that's a sort of.
Oh, well, I used to be an arts development officer, and one of the first things I had to absolutely sort of dig into was the idea that taste and quality are two completely different things.
Yes.
Because obviously I worked with an awful lot of things in different art forms that weren't necessarily my taste, but were fabulously high quality.
Sure.
And I actually did come up through a classical background. I used to be in orchestras and things, and I don't listen to it much now, but I love to see it done well.
Well, and then I should say that basically you've been doing a lot of like streaming. You're doing some classical bits, and then you've got a jazz thing you're doing as well. So.
Yes, yeah, we were just chatting a little about that before on air. Just so my mission, I've always wanted to kind of dabble in jazz, so I thought lockdown would be a good challenge to kind of force myself to learn. So I came up with this idea of doing a podcast in a white DJ, taking requests and just inviting people to stick the computer on in the corner of the room while they have their Saturday evening meals and sort of have their own personal cocktail pianist, as it were. So I've been doing that and alternating it with some Sunday afternoon classical lecture recitals, just sort of trying out ideas for when we finally get back to playing in real life. But yeah, I hadn't got a clue about live streaming before lockdown, and I just thought, again, try and get some positives out of it and learn some new skills. And I've enjoyed it so much, I'll definitely carry on even when things get completely back to normal.
Well, I have to say I've been really enjoying it as well. And I wouldn't describe myself as a classical fan. The soupy twist, which is the jazz thing, is actually quite up my street. And I have put it on most Saturday evenings and then potted around. I think I made you a cocktail one evening.
Yes, yeah. Which was great. Thanks.
So the company was just right to do that.
What did you have? What cocktail did you go for?
I think was I making Long Island iced teas or something?
I can't remember, but it was good.
Yes.
I know it was good.
Yeah, and then but then the classical stuff, actually, I've actually found it really interesting, because you don't just play the pieces, you also talk about the life of the composer, when they wrote this piece, all that. It's really interesting stuff, actually.
Well, before lockdown, I was really getting into trying to just find ways of sharing what I feel passionate about with composers to audiences who perhaps wouldn't normally go to a classical concert. And one of the bigger projects I've had is this company called Amusia Productions with Keith Lovegrove and Sarah Miles, which is producing recitals with a film. I'm playing in sync to a film about the composer's life, and the main one we'd be doing is Eric Satie so far. So Keith's made this black and white Dadaist film with text by Satie, taken from his words and letters, because he's just got the most amazingly great sense of humor. So I play piano dressed up as him on a set decked out with umbrellas and all sorts of other paraphernalia from his life, sort of playing in sync with this black and white film. So yeah, I've been getting into that kind of thing, trying to find new ways to make classical music relevant.
I definitely want to see that, because I really like Satie's music. So,
well, shame you can't come to the show in Brighton tonight, but that's what I was supposed to be doing tonight.
Yeah, you must. I mean, you must be suffering a lot with this lockdown. I mean, you're always working, so.
Yes, no, it's going to be quite a good year for interesting gigs, actually. And I must apologise, because God definitely invented the virus just to scupper my career.
I suspect a lot of people feel like that, even though they know it's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely fine to feel like that.
Well, Alex, let's stop talking. Let's hear some music. What's the first piece we're going to play?
We're going to play a piece by Franz Liszt, who was in some ways invented the concept of being a rock star. He invented the solo piano recital, and aristocratic women used to throw jewelry at him, which was, I guess, kind of latter-day equivalent of Tom Jones fans. But this is a piece called Un Sospiro, which means a sigh.
Okay.
Alex, that was amazing. Thank you.
I realised halfway through I'd never tried to play in headphones before.
Are you surprised how much you move? I mean, was that the problem, that they move too much?
Just I can't actually hear myself sonically as much as you'd like to.
Well, it's gone down really well, as we suspected it would.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's saying, wow, beautiful, really lovely.
Bravo, maestro.
Really fantastic comment from Tim Perry at the Windmill in Brixton, who said, we're determined to finally get a regular classical night off the ground after lockdown. There's so many people in bands with classical training. Mm-hmm. And what we were just saying is watching someone do something really well is always so rewarding, even if you don't necessarily know a lot about what it is they're going to do. And what was particularly lovely for us today is you're only the third pianist that we've had on, but you're the first one where we could see the hands.
Right, yeah.
we had Ed Harcourt. We've had Ed Harcourt on a couple of times, but the way his studio's set up is obviously him as a singer.
I saw that one. Yeah,
and so, I mean, everybody was saying we can't see if he's really playing, you know. And then we had Peter Duke Special, who we all know is a good pianist, but again, hadn't got it set up to be the hands. Was very much set up to be him as a performer. So this is lovely for us because this is the first time that people have been able to really see that artistry.
And on the subject of your hands, now I know bugger all about piano, but I thought the first thing was that your hands have to stay like.
But this is why he said Liszt was the first like rock star.
I thought they're supposed to be like left and right.
Yeah, but Liszt didn't like the rules.
This particular piece, it's a sort of study in trying to create a smooth line while still dividing between the hands. But there's a particular bit near the end. I don't know if you noticed, it's called the kind of ghost hand technique, which is invented by one of Liszt's rival pianists. In fact, they had a huge rivalry. This guy called Thalberg. They used to have these kind of piano offs to determine who was the biggest virtuoso. And Liszt won hands down, but he did borrow this technique from Thalberg, which is playing sort of arpeggios so that the top of the left hand and the bottom of the right hand alternate. So it sounds like there's a sort of middle hand playing. Sounds like there's a sort of middle hand coming from nowhere.
But the reason we don't know about this is more advanced stuff. I mean, the stuff that we've done on piano is, you know, what's one hand doing and what's the other hand doing, you know, what's bass clef, what's treble clef. And obviously that's where you start off. But there's
unfortunately, that is where most teachers start off, yes. But I think it's bad to teach people from the beginning that there's a segregation between left and right. It should be all the music and all of your body wants to be a oneness. So I think you can teach that right from the beginning.
I mean, I've seen the right hand go over the top because that's what Freddie Mercury does on Bohemian Rhapsody, which I've been teaching myself during lockdown.
That's a great challenge.
Yeah, I can't do it, but I do like the bit where you go ding ding like that. That's the bit I like.
It's a beautiful piano part. Really wonderful.
And as you know, since I saw you do it, I'm a little bit obsessed with getting anywhere near Rick Wakeman's part on Life on Mars. Mm-hmm. It's too difficult, isn't it? But I mean, I'm way out of my league, aren't I?
It's a difficult one to know how to approach that. Do you try and sort of play Wakeman's notes verbatim? Or do you try and enter the spirit of how improvisator he'd have been with it and try and just go for recreating that spirit? So if you go for the latter and you know your sort of basic chords on the piano, you can start to improvise a bit more and start to get that sort of florid, tinkly feel a little bit more easily. I don't know, but
he's very instinctive, though.
So basically, I shouldn't try and I should just basically do what I like.
Yeah, I think that's what Rick would tell you.
Good. That's right.
So that brings us on to the other little bit of the chat that we were having before about your adventures in jazz piano, and how you've decided to challenge yourself a bit more in jazz. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
But yeah, I was talking about with the CP Twist podcast. I have always suspected that jazz to convert from being a classical pianist to jazz is incredibly hard, whereas a jazz musician would be able to convert the other way much more easily, because I think that the ear skills you need to play jazz are just phenomenal, and the ability to improvise gives you that sort of understanding of how composers, maybe such as Chopin, arrived at the music that they ended up writing down. So I just thought it would be a crazy challenge to try and force myself to finally get better. So I've started off by cheating and just transcribing some Monk, like note for note, trying to sort of get a sense of how they thought, what sort of notes they had to select from when they were improvising, and it's just it's crazy. It's so hard.
But do you mostly play from music? You mostly play from sheet music, or?
Well, I don't like having music in front of me because it means you haven't internalized it, I think. So if I'm learning a new piece of classical music, I'll sit in the garden reading it until I kind of feel until I know it. Then I'll try it out on the piano and check I've remembered it okay. And
I love the way different people's brains work.
I never learned to read music, and I can't read music, and I found the exercise of trying to learn to read music to really actually be quite a barrier to playing.
It is that for a lot of people, and I think it's a real shame again with teaching in this country that people are forced to learn sight reading is such an important early part of it. Yes, it's a great skill and there should be an element of it, but I feel it's like teaching children to read before they can speak almost. So I think improvisation and just building up a natural affinity between your ear and the piano is far more important to encourage people to do when they start learning the piano. Maybe, a bit of music reading certainly, and if that's the way that a particular person gets on with best, then absolutely bring that to the forefront. But I think there's a sort of seems to be an idea with teaching in this country that you have to learn to read everything off the music first. And I've heard of, it's quite common for teachers to put books to stop children looking at their hands and force them to look at the music. Whereas I think if they were looking at their hands, they'd be naturally kind of developing their ear much more. So,
Great question from David Whittle. Does Alex have any thoughts on how playing piano affects autism? Thinking of Cody Lee in particular.
I don't know anywhere near as much as I would like to know about this. So I'm completely the wrong person to ask. I'm aware of some. I think maybe it's the Amber Trust does some stuff particularly.
Yeah, there's a few people doing work around this field. I mean, I don't know an awful lot about the use of piano, but I can tell you that music as a tool for engaging people who may have different methods of learning or different ways that they think about things is definitely something that I've seen huge studies on.
But I mean, even just the comment about classical and jazz is about different ways of learning, different ways of connecting with things, isn't it? And the move from highly trained classical into the less rule following jazz is kind of difficult for somebody who's gone that way. And part of the reason people connect with jazz or in fact go into pop, rock, other things is that they don't want to follow the rules and they don't want to, keep to what's written on the page.
Yeah.
Well, that would be my approach to written music. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, Mozart never played what was written on his pages. He improvised like crazy around it. And if you did that in the concert hall, well, it's starting to become fashionable again, which is great. But up until 10, 20 years ago, if you did that in the concert hall, you'd be laughed out. Chopin as well used to improvise all the sort of cadenzas in his pieces, although he didn't like anybody else improvising them, admittedly. But there used to be a sort of sense that the written score was just a basis from which you could break the rules. And people are starting to be more interested in that now. So I think this idea that it's such a church that you have to be reverential in when you're dealing with classical music is not what the composers really intended, and it's really given it the whole genre a bad name. I think it should be much freer. So.
Well, that goes back to the concept that actually a lot of them were the rock stars of their day. And it's really frustrating when it's sort of straitjacketed in this is proper music and it's got to be delivered in this way. And I've had arguments over the years with educationalists about the fact that, yes, Bach's music will endure, but Bach was a rock star and he was at the forefront. And, just because you revere that now doesn't mean that music created now hasn't got a lot of merit as well. It's just a different sort of thing. But I think it's the educationalists, not the composers or the musicians that created the work that are the problem.
Yeah, definitely. It's I don't think there should be any genres really. I mean, there should be music is a way of kind of manipulating sound waves to have an effect on somebody. For me, it doesn't matter if that's done with an electric guitar or done with an orchestra or in the hands of Mozart or Zappa or anyone. Really, it's the same thing. It's trying to achieve the same thing with similar tools. So I think
Duke Ellington said it, didn't he? Duke Ellington said there's two types of music: good music and bad music.
Absolutely, yes, which was absolutely can't argue with it.
Well, should we hear some more good music?
If you like, yeah. So I mentioned Chopin a minute ago. I'll play his Fantaisie Impromptu.
Absolutely excellent, Alex.
Cheers.
Just superb. But I should also say the sound is really, really good as well. That's
Gorgeous, yeah.
you were telling us that's a relatively new piano you've got that we
Yeah, I really like the sound of it. I think I was saying backstage, as it were, that just fell in love with it as soon as I touched it in the showroom, really. But it's from a company in Kent, actually, run by an ex-Formula One engineer who's trying to pointed out that piano technology has changed very little in 100 years, really, and he's sort of thinking it's about time that there's some innovations were made. So he's trying to bring some of the technology he learned about in the Formula One industry into pianos. So he's starting to use a lot of carbon fiber and 3D printed parts to take some of the sort of pianos are very angry about humidity level changes and things like that.
Yeah.
So they're trying to sort of start using parts which are going to be less affected by that. So it's quite interesting what they're doing. It's a company called Phoenix Pianos in Plaxtol.
Cool. Well, we've run massively over because it was too interesting.
Enjoyed it so much. We must just say to people that is Alex's YouTube channel, and you're trying to build your subscribers because it's something that you didn't really concentrate on until lockdown, isn't it? So you're really
Indeed.
trying to build that up as a way of communicating with people more regularly.
So if you go to cutt.ly/AlexPiano, I think you said you needed another 30 subscribers, and then you can make your YouTube address more personalized. So if everybody watching today just hit subscribe, that would really help Alex out and mean that your YouTube channel was more easy to find, I think is the point.
And we've got a couple of comments of people who really would like to know when you do start touring again, that the opportunity to go live. So where's the best place for information about that, Alex?
So it's alexmetcalfe.com. Alex with Metcalfe with an E, that is the proper Metcalfe. That's should be a massively out of date gigs page on there, which I will update when it becomes relevant to do so. So yeah, alexmetcalfe.com.
Okay.
Thank you
so much, Alex. That was really enjoyable.
Beautiful
playing.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's just fascinating to watch as well. You know, and as Bev said, that thing of being able to watch your hands, I think was just really fantastic. Okay, everybody everybody subscribe to Alex's YouTube. We'll see you soon, Alex. Thank you for coming
Alex.
in.
Bye.
Bye.
Right, well, there you go.
Well, I really enjoyed that.
I feel quite relaxed now.
Because I've had really tense shoulders, and actually they feel quite a lot better. So thank you a lot.
Francis Healy says, come to the Stoller Hall in Manchester. Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of people watching in actually from the venue circuit are all. I know, like Tim said about the windmill, but
yeah, I mean, there's so many amazing musicians out there, and as Alex said, it's really not about genre; it's about great music. But Francis, yes, on your other offer, yes, please.
Yes, on the you suggested something
connect us with other people you think would enjoy coming on Elevenses, with obviously the informality that brings with it.
And me just basically not really understanding what's going on. How's he doing that with his hands?
But thank you everyone who's joined us today. Hope you have a lovely Saturday, and we will return tomorrow.
Yes, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.